to our digital services work group bi-weekly meeting. We're going to go ahead and jump in, and I always like to start in the beginning just to level set on what we're actually doing as this group. So we do meet every other week, and we've been doing that since 2018. And our vision has changed a little bit this year. We're primarily focused on digital services last year. This year, we're going a little bit broader and looking at digital transformation.
Is it just me?
That group. Do you guys?
Yeah, John, you're dropping in and out.
You're breaking up a little bit, John. Is in and out.
Yeah, I think those. How about now? Is that good?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
better.
Yeah, I think what this announcement keeps coming on to say, admit people in the lobby. Yeah. So I'll get pretty quick to our agenda. The shared work we have on a drive, to Google Drive, and we're in the process of moving that to a forum. And then the hosting group is, we're a group of enterprise architects, and our whole group is basically the ones that host these from the ServiceNow side. Jeff Luby is running that architecture team in the US. We always like to keep track of our new members that are coming in, and that's why I always go through those first couple slides, just so you're not, deer in the headlights jumping in, so you know a little bit about what we do in the group. So if today is your first time, if you can just drop your name and where you're from in the chat, we'll be sure to recognize you and welcome you along the way. There's also a shared instance. I'm not going to demo off the instance today, but we do share an instance where we give everybody admin access. And if you do want access to that instance, there's a bunch of work that we've done on there. You can just drop me an email. That's still pretty informal right now. It's another thing we're looking to formalize some more. All right, so our agenda today is to hand it off to Alan and Jami, architects from Kaiser. They're going to talk about object storage as a service, and they're looking to get everybody's feedback. So they'll be soliciting feedback from you to see how others have done this or to solicit ideas. I know there are a couple people on from ServiceNow, so feel free to chime in and give them any advice that you've had in this area. And then I'm going to introduce a little project that I'm working on for 2022, a work group project, and solicit some feedback as well. And then if there's time at the end, we'll just go around the horn and see if anybody has anything interesting that they can fill us in on that they're working on with ServiceNow. So Alan and Jami, I'll hand it off to you. You should be able to share now. I think it'll just take it from me, and you guys can take it away.
Is it showing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Get my other page up here. There we go. All right. Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Alan Prohaska. Jami Tucker and I work at Kaiser in healthcare IT. And what we're bringing to you today is what we're ramping up on in terms of object storage. Our technology team is beginning to employ this, and we need to figure out how to represent this in our service management system in ServiceNow. So I'm going to show a couple diagrams just to provide context. So in traditional storage, you've got a storage array, and that contains disks. And when somebody wants storage, there's an allocation made from it, which a storage allocation, or the class that gets used is the volume, the storage volume. A server mounts that volume, and then they present a file system out to the client application, and the client application would use that. In object storage, it's similar, except that there is a there's a service abstraction between the allocation and the servers. So that way, the client doesn't have to be aware of, okay, where is the implementation? Where am I getting my allocation from? Instead, they address this storage service. And in fact, our technology leads call it storage as a service. OSAAS, Object Storage as a Service. The technology that we're using is Clarity, and their organization, the level of abstraction is called a ring. So the storage servers are all aggregated into a ring, and then you address that ring and say, give me some storage, and back comes a bucket, which is really charming. But it seems to have taken hold in terms of the terminology. And after you get that allocation, that bucket comes back to the application along with the passkey, which you use for your authorization. So that way the application can read and write, to and from the bucket, pushing information, pulling information, and that way they're insulated from the behind the curtain details of the individual storage servers. So let's elaborate this a little bit more as we're building this out in common service data model. So we have this same row that we had here. We've got the storage servers, and the ring is an instance of this overall business application, Object Storage as a Service. The vendor is Scality, or the application is Scality. So there are multiple deployments of this. We've got three production deployments in our production data centers, and then one non-prod deployment in the non-prod data center. And so clients would get allocations from those places, and out would come buckets, and those would get associated with an application deployment, which we represent as that's the mapped application service in ServiceNow, which is the child of the business application. So and then here's the passkey that goes with that for the authorization. In terms of services, we think that this is a technical service, a storage service, and one offering, which would be object storage. And we expect that there will be other offerings like either SAN or NAS or block or file. We need to work with the technology leads about that. But this is what we have in mind in terms of looking for a class for the bucket. We were directed to cloud object storage because typically object storage like this is located off-prem in the cloud, and so that would make sense. In our case, it's actually an on-prem installation, and so we're thinking that we might subclass cloud object storage into a class called bucket, just to make it very clear to clients, what is the CI? It's a bucket. But that should be equivalent if we do have some off-prem allocations that are storage and off-prem. So this is a whole lot of information. So I'm going to start turning off the fire hose. So in summary, I've told you about what we have in mind. We're ramping up on this, and in particular, we're interested in what's the class that we should be using for the allocation for the bucket, and that we're planning to represent the technical service and the technical service offering connected into the deployments. And wonder if you guys have feedback on that. And if any of you have used object storage, have object storage running in your environments, how did you represent it and did it work? So let me pause there. I see one hand up.
Anybody from the ITOM team on?
And is there a good way to find out who among those 77 people has their hand up? Or is it just sequential search? Sean, do you know a
anybody
good
should
way?
be able to come up. They
It
should be
should
able to come
in
up.
chat. Yeah.
I had my hand up, but I wasn't able to find chat anywhere.
We hear you,
Okay.
Paul. You want to go ahead with your? Are you there, Paul?
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to mention, and I had my hand up before they started, I just can't find chat anywhere on MS Teams. So it's okay with me, but you'd mentioned leaving our name and organization or whatever, and it's not even in the app. So anyway, that's all. That's what I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
I see the note from Rick Williams that it seems wrong to use cloud object storage for an on-prem. I agree. It's a little. There's some dissonance there. Hello. Rick, do you have a suggestion for an alternative class?
1 second, I actually have two things taking my sound down. Give me a second. Oops.
While we're waiting, Jami, anything to add? I yammered on, but I may have missed something.
So to me, real quick, that cloud object storage there, it's in between. You're going from the technical domain into the consume domain. But you got that cloud object storage in between, right? In the CSDM, it doesn't account for that, right? So you have the application service. You have the application scality as the application service, then going over to the right, getting into the consume domain, right? Is there a
It would all be here, because it's all within the managed technical service domain. You've got the app service. You actually have two app services. One is for the client application. The other is for the currently they've defined the object storage as a service as a business application. So we've got that deployment as well. And then the actual bucket is one of these infrastructure CIs. This is all how the technology group would assemble something that eventually gets offered over in cell consume. So, this is all in orange.
All in orange, got it.
So basically, you have your app. You're going to have certain applications that are going to be dependent on that object storage, and then you'll have a technical service because there'll be a group that's taking care of that storage. But
Correct.
the big question is how is it represented under those application services that consume them, right?
Yeah. I would assume that it would be a relationship, just like it would be a relationship to a traditional storage volume or file system.
Yeah, is it exclusively that is the traditional volume or storage system that it's exclusively dependent on, or would there be other things too?
That's one thing that it's dependent on. The other thing that a client application would need would be a server, and it could also have a database. In the past, in the traditional storage, the volume gets mounted onto the server, and then they use the file system that the server presents. This decouples that so that they just basically get a socket, and you can read and write from that socket. Somebody wasn't on mute, which I think can work okay. The application will have multiple technology requirements, so there could also be a database, there could be other things. Okay.
Yeah, my only thought on this is that it just seemed, and I'm not expert in this space with the object storage and stuff like that. It seems that seems like almost if you're receiving object storage as a service, it's almost invisible, right? You should go directly to the service. Do you need to represent the infrastructure behind that? I guess you do.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, if it's truly as a service, then this would all be off-prem, like in the case of Azure. When we're going out to get Azure resources, they've got a storage object, they've got a database object, and we just work directly with those. And Azure has all of this stuff behind it, but we don't see that. We just know,
See, that's service, right?
there's a service out there.
Yeah, I guess that's where my confusion is. That bucket there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's that piece. By saying it's cloud, but it is really on-prem. That bucket is on-prem, right?
It is, because we've implemented we've actually implemented these rings on-prem. But I asked, is there a what class does ServiceNow recommend? And this was the suggestion. And I think that it's because most storage as a service is off-prem and in the cloud. And so they've named the class this. So if we pick this class, or the bucket it's going to bark and quack like a bucket, and would bark and quack very much like what a cloud object storage CI would do. It's just unfortunate that it has cloud in the name, because that's a little bit confusing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's my feedback then. Is the naming convention of it is confusing, even though it's on-prem. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Do you think that if we subclass that to a class name that didn't have cloud in it, is that an improvement? Or is that lipstick on a pig? With no offense to pigs or lipstick vendors. I see Paul has his hand up. Paul, was it Gabois?
Yeah, sure is, absolutely. My thought would be, as far as classing is concerned, wouldn't it make a little bit more sense if at the top end for storage you had a storage like parent class, and underneath that you had on-prem and cloud underneath there? And couldn't you put your buckets under either of them depending upon where they are, so you could more easily identify where they're physically located, if that's an important aspect to the solution?
Yeah. In the current the current classing, let me just bring up our instance. Of course, when you're doing in front of people, it decides to slow down. Just like when you ask your child a simple question in front of guests, suddenly you can't respond, or kids say the darndest things. That's part of the charm. Okay. So there is this concept of storage volume, and it extends right from CI. And then file system is a subclass of that, and underneath there are these various file systems, NAS, NFS, SMB. There isn't the split in this class hierarchy of on-prem and off-prem. And I could see some people arguing, well, we really don't want to represent that in class, because that's an implementation detail. I'm not sure how that argument works out. But the file system is the closest thing that I can see to a bucket, because it's a, it's an area where people can read and write information. So that's why I was first thinking of just representing it as a storage volume and maybe subclassing that down. I think the suggestion for cloud object storage is that the traditional implementation of these is off-prem, and so that CI might match. So what I'm hearing from you is, instead of just adopting cloud object storage, maybe consider building off of this hierarchy, whether or not we decide to do the on-prem or off-prem. Did I get that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay.
But then underneath each of those, underneath cloud and on-prem, you would then end up having to have file systems duplicated as well.
Right.
Yeah. And now that I see
probably
exactly how they're doing that, I'm not sure if that's the best way.
Yeah. And I think my inclination would be, rather than to say, oh, this is a file system, is actually to be direct and say it's a bucket, because bucket is the concept that's used in with cloud infrastructure and with the more malleable environment. So let's just represent that directly. And so if I were to go this route, I think the question would be, do I subclass that from storage volume or from file system, or from someplace else? But good thoughts. I appreciate those. Well, let's see.
I mean, if you had a magic wand to create your own class, would you prefer that? Right? Are you trying to put something that maybe they have not, that ServiceNow hasn't provided an answer for?
So, I do have the magic wand, which is we can create a subclass, but then you get into the Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Is it and if there already is something, in the model that meets this need, generally speaking, it's better to go with something, from the platform, out of the box. The cloud object storage, if we were using discovery, and if this were an off-prem, we could probably get the cloud object storage CIs automatically built. Unfortunately, we don't have discovery in our implementation, but it is useful in terms of understanding the intent of the classes. Like, we can hook it up in a non-prod environment, train discovery onto a target location, say go, and it builds the CIs, and we say, oh, this is how things are supposed to be put together. If we had that, potentially we could train discovery onto this on-prem storage service and say go, and it would be interesting to see, would it build out cloud object storage CIs? But getting back to your question, what we want is to be able to represent the buckets so that we can tie them into the tree of CIs, so we know where it came from. It comes from this ring, and what it's connected to is to this application. So if this goes down, then this application will be an impacted CI, and an incident can see that, change can see that, and we can leverage it that way. It's so that it's tied in into the CI tree, the CI network. I'm not so particular about where it is, but only thinking about, if ServiceNow has already done work on this, we may as well leverage it, so long as it's not a really big mismatch. Was that from Mike?
Yeah.
So
Now, just trying to put a little tweak on the conversation to look at it through different lenses. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. Charles, I see your comment. Do you want to annotate that?
Sure. This comes more from my time as an architect before I joined ServiceNow. So it doesn't represent official ServiceNow policy or anything.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. At my employers, we swung too far on the side of trying to cram everything into the existing CI model, and we ended up overloading a bunch of classes. And so you've got a bunch of things that are like mandatory attributes for one group, but not for another group that are like sharing the same CI type. So what I've been trying to do at my past employers is swing them a little bit more the other way of recognize the uniqueness of different objects and then the uniquenesses of the different management processes that go around those objects and treat those as separate CIs rather than overloading them on one CI and then making everything more complex later. So yeah, that's more customization in your CMDB, but it's contained customization, and it's not the type of stuff where you're trying to parse out like, is this the customized version or is this the out of the box, and it's not intertwined and you're doing less filtering and all the rest of that.
So what about the decision about, okay, if I don't want to overload this class, do I subclass it or do I make a sibling class? Did you face situations, a decision like that?
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to like, how do you say, so like this one where it's saying cloud object storage. I think your inclination of no, it's a bucket, it's something unique that's a peer maybe of cloud object storage is the right way to go. At the end of the day, I think it's more important that you decide and have clear rationale than what the actual answer is. like you're consistent in how you try and do things rather than trying to be perfect with each thing.
More important for it to be defensible in court
Yes.
rather than what the actual document said.
Exactly.
Okay. That's helpful.
Here's a crazy thought that could be way off base.
Yay.
Right? Because it's not almost like with that, and maybe you still need that class, but could that be, I mean, you have a storage service. Are you offering it to the application in different ways? Are you offering it through this cloud object? It could be as simple as an offering. I know that's not disguised, because an offering is a CI. Right.
Well, the offering is how it's through the offering that they will get the CI. Our service, it's a technical service of storage, and then the various offerings from that are the various types of storage services: object, block, file, NAS, SAN, and so each of those would have its requestable items. You know, if I want to create, modify, or remove something from that storage or from that offering, the bucket is what they're actually going to use. And so they address a request and say, create bucket or allocate storage. They're going to address that through the requestable item associated with this offering. But the offering, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
So what I'd argue there is you've got two unique infrastructure CIs, a bucket and a passkey. You've got relationships of that bucket and its passkey, and you've got relationships of that bucket and the passkey to your client application and then to your technical service down below. So all of those things are delivered through a single offer in your catalog.
Right. And in the fullness of time, we would build all of that out. And in the crude MVP, those offers may go through, an email template that arrives to somebody and says, please make me one of these, and it's a manual check that gets the allocation approved and then done. Eventually they would just be going to the requestable item, generating the offer, which would get consumed, fulfilled, and back would come the bucket, which is already connected, related to all of those things. Okay. I'm not seeing more questions. The conversation is really helpful. If you run across other situations or information about object storage or storage as a service, I'd be glad to receive the input. My email is available through John, or maybe in the meeting invite. John, should we wrap this up, and do you want to go on to your next topic?
Yeah, sounds good. Good topic. I learned more than I was able to contribute, unfortunately, but thank you for that.
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for the thoughts.
I just have a few more minutes that I wanted to go over some stuff. Over the last 2 years, I did a project each.
John, you're dropping out again.
Yeah, those announcements, I can't stop. I am tired of Teams, man. Every time I get somebody in the lobby, it cuts me off. But I'm doing a project. I'm going to kick it off, and basically what we have is a lot of people have been asking me for this, where they run a central IT department. They have IT service desk. That service desk provides incident management and technology management for some assets, right? Because they're central IT, they don't support all the assets or all the applications. A lot of other departments have their own service desks, and they offer services just like the ones that we offer in our central service desk. So as part of a consolidation effort, right, instead of having 25 different, I've gone into some organizations that have 15 different service desk solutions, right? So when you talk about application deduplication as an EA, that's definitely a big target. So in some cases, the CIOs has said, can we consolidate these systems? Can we centralize the offerings that the service desk has? Not necessarily the service desk function itself, but the offerings. So basically saying, hey, you can come in and use my incident management offering on my instance, so that we're sharing more than we are, standing up other systems and administering other systems. A lot of these, I work in government, so a lot of times, the sheriff and Department of Health will all have their own systems, and they're all doing IT incident management and IT request management. So there's a lot of ways to do this, and a lot of people have come to me and talking about like ACL health. We have to use a bunch of ACLs to do this. And you don't really have to do that. There's a lot of simpler ways where you simply say you treat level 1 or tier 1 service desk as another assignment group, and you're able to get to tier 1. One organization, we did it as a workflow. When the incidents get logged and it says if there's no assignment group in the incident or no service, then we'll go and look at the department of the requester and then assign it to their tier 1. So there's other ways to do this besides ACLs. Everybody assumes ACLs right away, which is, I think, a bad assumption. So that's the problem definition. And what I'm thinking about is a deliverable. I don't know if any of you guys have gone through the exercise of an instance architecture.
Hello?
We actually go through, and
Hey, Trevor.
there's some
Oh,
hello.
Fun day.
Oh, somebody's not.
Oh,
on mute.
okay.
Continue.
You guys still hear
Yeah,
me?
no, I was just asking you if you could get to the Fire 2 cameras.
Let's mute
I
all
think
and
you're on the
then
wrong call.
unmute the speaker.
Yeah, you could just do a mute all, John, from your instance.
Okay, we'll try it there. All right, so so similar to the way that we recommend instance architecture, whether you do multiple instances, you do domain sep instances, you do there's app separation, and then there's deliberate customization. So there's like 4 models for deploying an instance or having an instance strategy in your organization. And we've been down that path a few times, and I want to do something similar here, where we have a presentation where we talk about the pros and cons of different ways of like implementation models. So I don't know if we come up with 3 or 5 different models where we can say, you know, here's one incident that you can come in through a portal or come in through a phone, and we could properly route it. So to give different options there, down to the ACL option where we go ahead and really forcefully separate everything. A questionnaire would help quantify it, and it's very similar again to those instance recommendations. Is we have a questionnaire, and it would lead them to a decision on which method is best for them to use when they're supporting multiple tier 1s or multiple, I guess, service desk stacks. And then a document at the end, and this is one thing with the instance architecture that we do that's really useful, is we memorialize the decision so that, you know, 2 years down the road and they say, why the heck did they do it this way? Those decision points are actually listed. Okay, so the next steps here is to poll you guys. So if you're comfortable coming off mute, and if anybody is either working on this today, or you have some opinions on this, or you're being asked for this, would be really ideal. Or if you've been down this path before, anything that you can provide me along those lines would be great, so that I don't have to start from scratch. A lot of times you end up doing stuff, you're like, wow, somebody spent a really long time on that before. So I saw some stuff on the communities. There's some stuff on the guru sites about ways to do it. There's even a couple apps up there. There's an app called Simple Separation that's really popular for doing multiple groups like that. Okay, after that, it's a matter of pulling the material together. And all that material will help determine the scope. And then also, if anybody wants to contribute to this, if they want to be part of like a little working group on it where we meet monthly and get together, let me know, and we can definitely do that. And it wouldn't be a big time commitment, but if the more people I have, the bigger we can go with the scope, or the more, you know, I think the better that body of work will end up being in the end. So the body of work I'm looking to create is that set of things that I talked about earlier, like a presentation of model options for doing multiple tier 1 service desks, but also to maybe even have it in Now Learning, but have it as a group of things that somebody from, at a minimum, somebody from our working group here can pick up and use and help them make their decision in their organization. But ideally, we'd even have this as a Now Learning course. So that one I talked to you about earlier, where you have the deployment options for instances, that's available on Now Learning today. So I basically want to redo that for this scenario, because this is a scenario I get a lot where, you know, we installed ServiceNow and Central IT, and we're using it for 10% of our service desk requests, because the other 90% are spread across all these departments that all do their own thing. So if anybody wants to come off mute, if they have anything to share, or just drop comments in there if you're interested in contributing or have something you can just contribute as far as material, I'd really appreciate it. And I'll share the information going forward that we start to assemble.
Hey, John, would this scenario include any type of instance e-bonding, or would that be something else?
That would be something else.
Okay.
It could be, yeah, it could include that, I guess, because like e-bonding could be that well, you're not really sharing it on the single instance. What you're doing is you're saying, okay, there's a service on this instance, a service on that instance, and we're kind of letting them use each other's service.
Right.
What I'm talking about here is actually offering like incident management as a service to tier 1 and request management as a service to tier 1.
Got it. Okay.
Hey, John, it's Alan. It's a very familiar problem, and I'd be glad to join a working group to provide feedback. It's a version of I think it's a version of the shadow IT problem, where you introduce the centralized tool, and like you said, it gets used for 10% because everybody has their own systems, and the trap here is that's fundamentally a process problem and a stakeholder management problem, because all stakeholders will assert, oh no, we're different, we're special, we've got really complicated needs, and we couldn't possibly use a centralized solution. And experience shows that may be the case for 10 to 20%, but generally speaking, 80% of their work could follow a standard solution. But there's a lot of resistance to that, and the trap is to try to find some tool magic to address that process problem. And what you really need to do is to back it up and solve the process first, and go to the stakeholders and say, okay, so tell me about how you do incident request, and what are the flavors of incident? What are the flavors of request? What kind of services do you offer? After getting all that information, you're going to see some clustering, some affinity clustering of things that multiple people do. And that could be the first segment of, okay, here's some common services. And then the challenge is to offer those in a way that is attractive and competitive, so that it's to their advantage to use the central solution, cheaper and simpler, rather than maintaining their own. And that's when you get into the tooling. But the first step has to be understanding, how they see the world. I'll go ahead and say it, whacked as it may be. Customers see things the way they do, but if you're going to get them onto into a central solution, they can only move from where they are. So you really need to understand where they are in order to paint a path for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so you basically become the vendor, right, as that central IT organization. And I think a lot of CIOs now, this is becoming, you're hearing like GBS, Global Business Services, and in the government sector that I work in mostly is CIO as broker, where you're actually trying to become a broker to more of these services that people can share. And so that's the trend right now. So a lot of people are asking about it. And I think doing incident and request is good with this group because people are familiar. But when we get to the bottom of it, it's not going to be much different than, let's say, onboarding, right? If you're doing certain HR functions or different service desks for facilities. So I think it's going to be the same thing, is like, how can we, one, provide that service, and then two, how can we provide it as a service to others, right?
Right. So in terms of the advantages to pitch, one is cost and simplicity. The central solution should be cheaper and simpler for them to use. Other advantages is if there is cross-organization coordination required, if an incident may start in one place and either involve another organization in the solution, or may have to move, if those can be in a single process, that's more efficient. And then finally, if things have a common definition, it provides greater opportunities for shared resource management and for coverage between the functions.
Yep. And we had Esri on a few weeks ago, the EA team from Esri, and they talked a lot about moving from demand-based planning to capability-based planning, right? And this is moves you into that more mature capability-based planning, where you're providing a capability that everybody uses instead of everybody providing that capability for themselves. So I think it's a real maturity step, right? So that would have to be recognized in there, that there's going to be some growing pains in doing it, but there is a possibility. I think a lot of people have gotten here too, gotten here already, right? And that'll be an interesting part of the study, I think, too, to see who's actually been through this already and figured it out on their own. It's sort of like that one. I'm working with a city that actually has a workflow that'll come in and do the assignment, where people have they do it at the catalog level, so that depending on who you're logged in as, you'll have permissions to certain catalog items that'll populate an incident differently, right, and assign it to the right group. So there's all these different approaches you could potentially use. ACLs being the one that everybody cringes at, like I said before, but it'd be interesting to see what's really working and then what's been a pain in the neck to everybody. Okay, cool. Thanks for the input on that, and I will reach out definitely to anybody. What we're also doing here over the next few meetings, we're going to create, I don't know if anybody's a member of the ServiceNow communities, but it's been a little bit of a, because there's about 800 of us on that email invite now, so it gets hard. Our email caps out at 500. So what we're doing is we're going to move this to a community, to a forum, sort of like our developer forum, and we have a couple other business forums too in ServiceNow. And this will be a good forum topic that we'll be able to, post that body of work on, and then actually have a collaboration on that community with different questions and also, draft documents and such we can put on there instead of having it all in the Google Drive like we have it today. So I think this could be that first body of work to kick that off. I have a couple people on there that are helping me with this, that are all co-owners of the Digital Service Work Group Forum. So that'll be a huge help for me, and I'm looking forward to really maturing this so that we can get some of this shared with everybody. All right, that's all I had for today. Is anybody, I want to open it up because we haven't done it like a roundtable in a while, but I just want to open it up to general comments. Anybody getting stuck, anybody trying DPM, any of the things we've talked about over the last few meetings that you need to follow up on, or do you want to come on and run something through with a group like they did today from Kaiser? Open forum time. We'll give it a few minutes.
Yeah, this is Paul Gabois. Real quickly, Mike Van Bergen forwarded me this invite for today's session. How do I make sure that I'm invited to all the future sessions? Because I'm finding this to be fascinating and I'd like to be involved. So.
Oh, excellent. So once you're on the my email list, I just have a spreadsheet right now that I'm putting everybody in. And once the meeting gets forwarded to you, I put you on that list until you tell me to take you off.
Okay, great.
What we'll do is
I've been drafted. Okay, good.
You've been drafted. So
Perfect.
You just have to tell me to stop if you want it to stop.
Yeah, no, keep them coming. And I do have one other quick question too. It would be for me, just based on where I am right now at MUSC, it would be great for me to get a better understanding of how ServiceNow uses ServiceNow to support their enterprise architect practice. Are you using tools like Lean IX, with ServiceNow and or other tools along with ServiceNow in order to enable and support your enterprise architecture capabilities?
Yeah, can you drop me a note in the chat, because we use Inspy, which is a EA tool that runs on the platform. We had them in not too long ago to go through their products, and we have a white paper from our EA team that talks about like a now on now paper, they call it, where they publish their approach. So they use a mixture of APM and Inspy, which is one of our partner products.
Okay, great. I'll send you over a message.
Okay.
John, this is Mike with Argonne. I shot you an email, and I don't know if anybody else has run into this. We're starting out down the DPM path and with Service Builder, and the issue we're having, and I don't know if anybody else had this, if it's a roles issue or a configuration on our side, but we found that with Service Builder, we can go all the way to publish on the first time we create the service, but if we come back in on a draft, it's not allowing us to approve it and it's saying we have duplicate services. Has anybody else run into that?
I have. Yeah, I have myself run into that. And I don't know the process to get into that situation, but sometimes I do. And then you have to go back and delete the draft and then start again. It like creates a copy of the object when you check it out. And then when you check it back in, it rationalizes the copy in the regular object. So I would log a ticket for now. And I have a ticket on that as well.
Okay.
So the service builder, yeah, I can't figure out how I'm getting out of sync, but it only happens sometimes.
Well, there's a couple of things that almost appears with the current taxonomy node service definition structures where you have to do, like you said, where you have to actually go back and delete everything and then reload. We've run across that also when we were building our service portfolios and nodes. So it was quite challenging. So we're learning. It's
yeah, I never had anything where I went back in though when that happened. Usually I get it in the beginning, like if I stop in the middle and then I go in and I edit the main object after I started with the draft. I do it like from another screen. I know I can reproduce it that way, but you know, I guess the solution to that is to exclusively use the service builder, but I still got old habits, right? Going into those old forums.
Well, we're trying to we're even trying to do it exclusively using the service builder, but it seems like you said there's a draft copy and a published copy, and then when you go in, it says nope, can't store the draft copy over the published because it's you've already existed, and it's like okay,
yeah. We'll do tickets for now. I'm sure Caitlin has some visibility to that. I don't think she's on today though.
Okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Yes, Service Builder is interesting. We had a conversation the other day with Service Builder on, do we let, especially with the business services now, are people that weren't defining services before now able to come in, like the service owners, able to come in and define those properties? And it was a really interesting conversation because the ServiceNow team gets stuck with doing all that today, but sort of like what you're doing with the citizen developer, right? The low code, no code on App Engine, kind of the same thing here with the service builder. You can let those service owners take it the first mile, and then the last mile might get picked up by an architect team or somebody on the ServiceNow team that knows the CMDB really well.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, for lack of a term, enterprise service management, because right now everything comes through our IT service management organization, and we maintain ServiceNow. And that's one of the powers I think a service builder is, for lack of another lack of term, it's kind of idiot proof. You could fairly step by step through, and at the end you end up with the defined service that you want.
Yeah. Cool. Glad to hear you're going through it. Anybody else using Service Builder?
Pardon?
I haven't seen it. I
wonder
love to.
Hey John,
this is
email. Mitch. Can you hear me?
Hey Mitch.
Yeah, so I'm playing around with the Service Builder in the dev instance, right? Your personal instance, and I'd love to see more functionality to include things that we typically define in a service, the different attributes. Do you foresee something like that coming?
Yeah, there's like what's in scope and what's out of scope and those types of things, being able to add things. Yeah,
because I love the idea of kind of a WYSIWYG for our service owners to take control and ownership of managing their own, their own offerings and services.
I don't know. That's one I'll have to bring up to Caitlin. She's been reaching out to some of the people on the group for feedback. So if you,
I'm happy
you
to
drop your
provide
name in
what
there,
kind of functionality we would be interested in leveraging.
Great. Yeah, great. I'll have her reach out because I know Lou had a conversation with her a few weeks ago. I don't know if they went into Service Builder or they just did DPM, but she's definitely in there because these are both V1 products.
Right.
So we're definitely reaching out
Yeah,
to get as much feedback as we can.
All right, thanks, John.
You're welcome. All right, I think that's all we had for today. Anybody else has anything else or thinks of anything else afterwards, just drop it in that chat. I always go through there, and in the newsletter, I answer as much as I can that we didn't close the loop on. So, and I had one other really nice presentation to share today that we came out with, but I'll share that next time. I'll save that for next time. All right. Any last comments? Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kaiser, for presenting and sharing that today. Great session.
Thank you. Appreciate it.